I'm Stephanie Kimu, and I'm the co-founder of the Black Doula Project.
And I am Erin Tanner, and I am co-founder of the Black Doula Project.
So the Black Doula Project started as an experiment. What would happen if every Black person who wanted a doula could have a doula, no matter the cost? And I think that kind of falls in line with a lot of exploration for Black people. What would happen if we had access to something? And so the Black Doula Project is really this idea that we deserve protection, we deserve care, we deserve love, and we shouldn't see that as a luxury during our birthing experience. So Black Doula Project is a grants-based program where we give small grants to Black parents so they can access a doula, whether it's postpartum. I had a postpartum doula when I had a baby last year, came in and stayed with the baby all night so I could sleep. A birth doula. I'm a birth doula. Actually, Erin is a postpartum doula.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a birth doula, just having someone there to squeeze your hips, to advocate for you with your sometimes with your partner.
True.
Sometimes, but mostly with the staff at the hospital, you know. Doulas are they're just the ultimate caretakers. And I'm West African, and so when we birth back home, it's always in community. It's always, I mean, not usually a lot of celebration is put into having a baby. And in the United States, as a Black person, there's so much fear. There's so much anxiety about birthing. And when you have a doula, you can kind of reinfuse this idea of joy and protection and love. And I deserve this for my birthing experience. So, yeah, we were just like, what if we paid all the doula fees?
Literally, it was a brainchild where all of a sudden, I mean, it kind of started, I feel like, too, as a social media piece, right? Where we're like, we're just out here displaying that Black people have power in birthing, right? And then we just started talking, and then it was like, we were doing free work between the both of us. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, there's a lot of movement here, and we feel like we need to do more. And so the concept of being like, hey, let's turn this into a fund. What if every Black person did have a doula? How would that look? How would we be able to change the game in creating an experience that provides advocacy and lets Black people know that, like, there's no need for you to birth in fear because you have people who are going to support you. You have a community. We as Black people have gotten away from this sense of being part of a community, not just a family, but being part of a community, and how that grounds you in your development, how that grounds you in you being able to take space that you are required and that you are needed to take. We were just like, hey, let's see if this could work.
Yeah.
And it's been working really well so far. I think that the response that we've gotten, the people who are applying to be, grantees and everything like that, has just been so fulfilling. We didn't really think it was, not that it wasn't going to work. Obviously, we saw vision in what we were trying to do, but more so that other people believed in us and that they too felt like they needed the same support and nurturing that a doula could provide.
So doulas, I think, also support the parent. And so if you're a Black person birthing and you have a partner there with you, whether it's your mom, whether it's your sibling, whether it's your romantic partner, they also support in that person in taking care of you. Because if your partner is in birth, you don't know everything to do. You may know them intimately, but you don't know about the hip squeeze. You don't know about the different phases of labor and why she's now screaming when 2 minutes ago she may not have been, you know? And so I think it's also a beautiful community building almost exercise to have a doula, because it's prepping you for the next phase when this baby comes out, and it's like knuck if you buck a little bit with all of y'all. So yeah.
I think that doulas they have the ability to help parents just feel nurtured, to feel comforted, to feel supported in different ways, right? And I don't feel like, even if you may have, your parents in the room in X, Y, and Z, they don't provide the same level of support and knowledge that a doula does. And also advocacy from the aspect of, understanding the things that hospital staff say, or being able to come in and be like, hey, this person, can you explain what you're doing? Right? Because a lot of times hospital staff just do what they do. They're working off of routine too. They have patients they have to see, they have to get in and out. They've got a floor, right? And so I think that doulas allow parents to feel comforted, but at the same time also require hospital staff to slow down and potentially, not make mistakes, but potentially just see the whole person and not just a chart.
I think if all Black parents had doulas, it improves the health outcomes of a Black person, whether it's things like hypertension, it's blood clots, it's I'm in pain, listen to me. All of these things can balloon in a birthing situation into life or death very quickly. And so to have someone there tasked specifically to advocate with you, because doulas don't really advocate for you. They're not
Right.
talking to providers about this is what my client needs. They're saying, give me the information I need so I can share it with my client and they can make the most informed decision. I think if any of us had that type of advocacy, buying a home, birthing, finding a job, doing things that improved our life, all of those outcomes, all of our indicators and outcomes would improve. But when we talk about birthing, it is life or death. I believe, and the data shows, less Black people would die, less Black children would die. And that's why there is more legislation coming out. There are more less neutral policymakers who are saying we have to invest in doulas. This is the most affordable way to try to change that health outcomes for Black people.
Like doulas can't stop death.
Yeah, that's totally accurate. Doulas don't save lives, but they provide the enabling environment for the safest possible outcomes. That is absolutely tied to life or death situations.
For a very long time, I feel like doulas were almost working in a place of luxury, right? But also something that just wasn't talked about, right? And it's sad to think that because historically, right, you did have a community. You had a community to support you, even in slavery, right? When Black women were birthing, right, it was still a community effort. It was an oppression, right? But at the same time, like the community gathered, like there was multiple support systems to be able to bring this new life into the culture, into society. And I feel like as a once again, as a unit, we have moved away from that. And so while doulas did not stop death, right, in the work, the extremely and powerful work that they do, what they do is they create a sense of comfort, they create a sense of support, and they create a sense of understanding too. And they help to alleviate fear, right? It's the concept of you being able to feel like as a birthing person, I am in my most protected state. There are people who are around me who are looking out for my betterment in all situations, and also making me feel like I am not just empowered, but that I'm also valid, right? And that, my concerns, my fears, my path is mine, right? And it's something that I own. But at the same time, if I do need a little bit of coaching, if I do need a little bit of hype, right? I have that. And I have the ability to make sure with a doula that I'm comforted and that support is always there.
Oh, it's so good to hear you say that because it makes me think anything is possible when you feel safe
Yes.
in your life.
Yes.
Anything
Always.
is possible when you feel safe. When you're 16 and you're taking your driver's test, it's like, if I feel safe, I can drive. If I feel safe, I can do this bicycle thing at 5. If I feel safe, I can birth.
I can birth.
And it's just like, oh, it's a spacious existence
Yes.
in that moment when you feel so safe, you feel like you can bring new life into the world. And so I'm really moved by what you said.
Yeah. And I mean, in some of the information that we get from our grantees where they're like, no, I don't necessarily feel like I have the best relationship with my healthcare team, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that's where a doula can be that bridge, right? A doula is part of your birthing team, right? But they're not as clinical as an OBGYN. They're not as clinical as a nurse midwife, right? So they are that bridge to be able to support me through this journey. They're with me, right? They've, most people start to have a birth doula around like second trimester, so like 20 weeks in ish, right? 16 to 20 weeks, where you may chat with this person over the phone, via email, via Zoom, at least twice a week, right? So it's almost like you get this instant support system that's just helping you through this process, that's making you have an understanding that the questions that you're asking aren't dumb, right? The questions that you're asking are valid. And these are concerns that you should bring up with your provider, right? It's not okay. It could not be okay for you to feel this way. So call your provider, call them, like at your next appointment, say these things, like have a list of questions to bring in, right? And working through that process of just feeling like that concept of like white coat syndrome, which is where people feel nervous in talking with somebody who has a white lab coat, so doctors, right, nurses, all of that stuff, to the point where you don't want to be an advocate for yourself, you don't want to say what potentially you're really feeling, or even exempting, because of the fact that you don't want to feel out of place, right? And so there's that piece. And then two, I feel like having a doula be in the room while you have other people who are trying to make decisions for your care helps you feel like you're controlling your own health or your own fate. And I just feel like
Mm.
that's just really important. And then also from the aspect too of, dealing with potential death or dealing with loss and things like that, you're just sent home from the hospital, right? You're literally just sent home. They're like, hey, sorry this happened. Come back for your 6-week checkup. Here's a pamphlet, right? It's not, there's no
Not
empathy.
comprehensive.
It's not comprehensive. There's no empathy in totality, right? Because yes, nurses may come in and you may feel, they may treat you a little bit differently and things like that. But when you go home after those 2 days or whatever, like it hits, grief hits, sadness, like
Yeah.
it just the amount of just feeling like I'm just not complete anymore. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And to expect to have to do that by, not potentially by yourself, but to expect to have to do that with potentially another person who is hurting just as bad as you are,
Mhm.
how are you going to do that? How
Yeah.
are you going to do that successfully and be able to go on with your life without feeling like you never had the ability to just have somebody to help you through that grief, help you through that loss? It's a big deal.
Yeah, I think the Black Doula Project is filling gaps on maybe three levels. First, clearly with birthing people, in
Mhm.
terms of being that bridge between their desires and what is going to be possible with their team, their birth team at the hospital. Then there are also doulas fill gaps, and the Black Doula Project is trying to help parents fill gaps when they get home with their postpartum support. How do I change the diaper? Some people are really needing
Mhm.
a level A support to Z. And so just really getting people feeling comfortable around being a parent after they just came out of that birth. And then the Black Doula Project is trying to advocate on behalf of doulas. Doulas advocate or support a lot of Black parents all year round. And
Mhm.
we just want to be an entity that supports them in terms of educating the world on what doulas do, in terms of giving doulas a platform to tell their stories, giving Black parents a platform to tell their stories, ensuring that all of those stories and narratives are informing policy. And so, yeah, I think the Black Doula Project is supporting on a humanistic level, on a policy level, and I hope we can all start seeing doulas as people who need support also.
Mhm.
People who really deserve
Mhm.
policy support so they are paid equitably. People who deserve self-care opportunities because they are on their feet squeezing hips for upwards of 48 hours sometimes if they're having a birth. And so
Mhm.
I don't know. I hope doulas can see the Black Doula Project and see themselves within it and not just see two people who have a social media platform.
Mhm. And I think too, another gap that the Black Doula Project is um, filling is awareness, right? But awareness for doulas, but then also awareness on Black maternal health, awareness from, and also awareness from a financial perspective that doulas aren't a luxury. they are not. And us being able to make that piece affordable for other Black women, for me, is filling the gap all on its own. The fact that we, right,
Mm.
could be impacting data, statistics, like the fact that we are out here championing doulas, but then also creating a vehicle for women to just get self care in the aspect of, I'm not doing this alone. And it's hard, it's difficult. And I think that that gap of self reflection, that gap of self care for Black women is something that I feel like we are moving. It's almost like it's a renaissance. Like we're moving back into that space. And because for a long time, Black women, it wasn't Black women. I feel like
Black birthing people.
sorry, excuse me, Black birthing people, it's very difficult for us to be able to have an understanding of what our well-being and what our self-care looks like. And I feel like having a doula to support you during this journey is a huge piece to you celebrating your self-care and celebrating your well-being and celebrating bringing a new life into this world. That's huge, and it's the gap that we're filling.
But I think that the point you made about data is really important. I think the Black Doula Project, hopefully, we can move into a space where we are collecting data on what happens when all of these people have a doula. So, and maybe it's not data, it's collecting narratives, collecting real life experiences that start painting the picture of transformation, that infusing the maternal health world with resources to pay for doulas could change the landscape and change the data. And so I think that's a really important aspect. Yeah. I think if we normalize doulas for all Black birthing people, we would be free. I think we would be free to birth at home. We would be free to birth wherever we wanted, wherever we felt safe. We would feel free to speak up. We would feel free to stop something, start something. And in general, Black people don't feel free in the United States and globally. And so if we
Mhm.
normalize doulas, I believe it could be one aspect of our lives as Black people that was part of our liberation story.
Birthing work is not easy. It's labor intensive. And when you look at the dollar for dollar value of what doulas are charging compared to the hours that they have to put in, it's a lot. And so, from a policy perspective, we at the Black Doula Project would love to see legislation that takes the care that doulas provide to birthing people to be able to show that they're valuable, that these that doulas are now part of insurance plans, and it's part of your benefits at your job, right? So what I'm saying, where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're going on a maternity leave, hey, here's a payment for your doula services. Like, it needs to become part of our normal and everyday, so that it's no longer seen as a luxury. It's no longer seen as something that's elitist, right? It's seen as something that is practical. And I don't know how else to describe that. Like, it's practical. It's like going to the grocery store. I'm picking up, zucchinis. I'm picking out a doula. Like, it's the same concept. And I'm like, the fact that we can provide that from a policy perspective, we can provide housing assistance, we can provide food assistance, we can provide healthcare. Why can't doulas be part of that same ecosystem? Because it's a part of life. It's a part of what we need. And I think for a long time, the focus has been so heavily placed on healthcare. And while healthcare is a huge component, right, of birthing, at the same time, there's not as much placed on the entire phase of birthing, right? It's not just placed on, it's not, birthing is just not clinical. There's a lot of emotional aspects that go into that. And sometimes it's not something that can just be controlled with medication, right? It's something that we need just support in, and doulas provide that support. So, I mean, from my perspective,
Mhm.
I definitely see the Black Doula Project being able to influence that walk. Doulas being accepted as part of just an overall team to just make sure that birthing people are coming out of this process whole.
Mm.
Whole.
Oh, I love that.
You're welcome.
beautiful question that no one asks us.
True.
But doulas are literally the only people who ask, "What do you want your relationship to birthing to be?" And I think personally, doulas felt familiar. And I really wanted that energy of familiarity. I wanted a black person by
Mhm.
me and my partner's side while we were going through the pregnancy and the postpartum. And so I think the power with doulas for me personally is really rooted in this idea of a tribe. I'm a tribe-based person. Again, I'm West African, so tribes are really essential to my life, and building a tribe, building an ecosystem, as Aaron says, has always made me feel held. And so I knew, I mean, I had 4 doulas. Nutrition, my body, my baby, and the birthing situation. And so I felt like that was luxurious. I felt like a almost kind of bougie. I never wanted to tell people I had all of that support. And so when I think about my life in this work, I want people to normalize the idea that you deserve a tribe. Like it's inherent to your safety that you have a tribe to birth with. And so doulas have totally changed my perspective on what it could look like to let someone in, to
Mhm.
let them into your home, into your heart, into your mind, into your partnership with, if you're married, if you who you're just partnered with someone at home. But it's this ability of doulas to break down any barriers that you had to open up, because there's nothing that opens you up more than a baby physically and mentally.
Some of the rewards that I feel like we get is the fact that you have birthing people who are contacting us saying, especially our grantees saying, I don't know what I would have done without my doula. Or, this situation happened and my doula felt, I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
This situation happened and, my doula was there to protect me. It's the fact that we are feeling protected. And I think that to me, that's one of the biggest pieces that the Black Doula Project is fulfilling, but then at the same time, just the stories that we hear about feeling protected. I mean, what other space do you feel like you need to be more protected in? Like, you're literally completely exposed. You're absolutely vulnerable. You're in this state where hormonally things are changing, physically things are changing, like mentally things are changing, and you literally have a person that's just there to protect you as a whole. Like, that's huge. And I don't really feel like in a lot of other spaces in your life do you ever feel like you have that protection level in such an intimate moment.
No, it's true, because you can feel protected by the police. Some people do.
I was
Not
going to say
anyone in this room,
context.
maybe.
Context.
Some people will say, I feel protected by the police, or someone who's tasked with saying, I'm going to remove harm. But those people aren't seeing you butt naked, spread open, with milk leaking from your chest, seeing your entire homes, hearing the terrible fights you're having with your partner. Other people in the world tasked to protect you are not going to intimately be connected with you the way doulas are. And so I feel like you should tell a story of an application, because we get so many
We do get
applications
really
that are
applications.
different scenarios of high risk, whether it's I'm fleeing a violent situation from someone, or I'm totally alone. I just lost my mom. I just lost my parents somehow. But yeah, it's been heartbreaking and fulfilling at the same time to be part of the Black Doula Project, because it's heartbreaking to internalize a little bit the
Mhm.
devastating circumstances that Black people are bringing to us of why they want a doula. And it's fulfilling to know that this little $1,000 grant is shifting someone's reality. It's like, I don't know, it makes me really emotional.
Yeah. From the aspect of me not having a doula for my birth, right? For like, specifically with my oldest, with my son. it was a scary situation, right? I'm a first time mom, walking in there, 37 weeks proud, right? um, my partner, my husband, he has never had kids before. We've never been in a situation where he's ever seen me in the hospital. So he's nervous. He literally lost his wedding ring in the couch. I'm in a gown, just everything out. I'm
Not
looking to
happy
try
about
and
that.
find his ring and in between the couch and things like that. But we were in a situation where when we were birthing my son, he his heart rate dropped, right? And so I'm looking at my husband and he's looking at me, and then I'm looking at the doctor, and they're like, okay, so we're just gonna pause for a second. And I was like,
What does this
what
mean?
does this mean? Like what? And they were like, yeah, so let's try again. So another contraction came, and I'm pushing and his heart rate drops again, right? And now I'm scared because I'm just like, hey, you never walk into a hospital pregnant thinking that only two of us are going to walk out of here. Like whether it be my husband and my son walking out, or whether it be me and my husband walking out. So now I'm in a state of shock,
Oh
right? I
God.
know I'm about to cry. I'm getting nervous because I'm just like, wait, something's not right, right? So then all of a sudden we go from a team of two nurses and a doctor to, two OBGYNs, a neonatal natologist. I've got four nurses. I've got the neonatal natologist's assistant, right? So we go from a room of four people, five people, to now all of a sudden be in a room of like 12. And nobody's telling me what's happening, right? So then it's like, okay, the doctor's like, yeah, so I think what's happening is, your son's shoulders are coming down on the vertical and not on the horizontal. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, so what's going to happen is I'm going to use forceps. I'm going to turn him. Then we'll see how it goes. And I'm like, okay. So then I'm on oxygen now because they're like, we want to get as much, oxygen flowing and things like that. And so, I mean, ultimately, forceps were used, and everything was a Croy within two pushes ended up coming out, and everything was fine. But as soon as he came out, he was taken away,
Yeah.
right? So he's taken over, but to providers, they're checking him out, they're making sure that everything is okay. Like my husband is still confused. He doesn't know what's going on. He's like, do I stay with you? Do I go to the baby? Like what needs to happen? I'm on oxygen. I'm freaked out because he's not crying. There was just a lot of situations where I feel like if I would have had a doula, if I would have had somebody there that was just like, hey, like, let's just take a second to pause, right? Or, this is what's going to be happening, and doing it in a way where I'm with somebody who I knew, who was with me for forever, right? And helping me through this journey to know that there's a comfort system there. Because with Croy, when I did birth, the doctor that, I wanted, that I've all been seeing the entire time, was not available. So I had, and the doctor that I did have to birth my son, I had never seen before. Like it was, yeah, it was, because it's a practice of doctors, but with that practice, this doctor did not accept insurance, right? So he was I feel like he was concierge OBGYN. But so it was just, but and he came in, he was like, yeah, I'm like one of the best, OBGYNs in DC. Like you came on the right day. And I'm like, okay, like how was this comforting me, right? How are you helping me through the situation? And then even afterwards, to have the same provider look at me and be like, oh wow, you're like a birthing pro, I'm gonna be able to see patients after this. I was expecting to be here all day. My son is literally over there with like neonatologist, and you want to come at me and cut this joke? Like, yes, he was probably trying to do it to make me feel comfortable, but it was not warranted. It didn't provide any level of
And
comfort.
he didn't
And it
know
was
you.
and he didn't know me. And so I feel like if I would have had a doula to be able to reassure, to be able to make sure that me and my partner felt safe, protected, supported, and that I was knowledgeable about what was happening, I always wonder if my process would have been different. And even my ability to be able to bond with my son afterwards, it was hard. Bringing a child home is always, a shift, right? In how our normal works. But the fact that like for 6 weeks, it was hard. It was definitely hard feeling like I was connected to him because it was just such a shock. It was such
Mhm.
a shock to the system. So, now he's my main man, right? He's great. Like and we did have a favorable outcome, but I always wonder if I would have had a doula, would that have impacted my journey? If I would have had a postpartum doula, would my connection with my son have been stronger when he was an infant versus having to have that build over time? Like, a relationship. Like I didn't, when he was born, I didn't feel all of a sudden like these warm and fuzzies where everybody's like, oh, you know, you're a mom, like they're on your trust. No, it was trauma. It was just like, man, do I want to experience this again? Do I want to potentially have another child and have this happen? Like for a solid 2 years, I was like, I don't think I want any more kids, specifically because how I felt in a situation where I had no control made me feel like I wasn't seen and that I wasn't supported and that this is not a place that I want to be in again. It was rough.
No, but that's why we started the Black Doula Project. We wanted to get rid of all the questions in Black parents' mind of what if.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, it doesn't have to be what if. You can have a doula. You can apply to this fund until we have the legislation in this country to provide you with that. But God, Aaron, I never knew that you thought about the what if.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to hear because I'm just gonna get emotional. But anyway, I just really appreciate you sharing that. And I hope no one who interacts with the Black Doula Project has to ever think that, has to
Mhm.
ever consider what if I had a doula? That's the project. What if you did? What if you did every time you wanted one? To the point where, data is going to change and
Mhm.
outcomes will change anyway. The future for the Black Doula Project, I think Aaron spoke about it a little bit, but it's this ability for full spectrum support. And so right now we're offering $1,000 grants to Black
Mhm.
parents so they can pay for their doula. But what if we incorporated funding for other things like acupuncture, like mental health support, like support for your partner, birthing classes? And so I really hope we can not only expand the number of grants and the amount of grants that we're giving out every year, but what if we could think about Black people holistic health, mental, physical, emotional, as they enter parenthood or as they're navigating parenthood. So I know that's one goal for us is to increase the different modalities for taking care of Black people during their pregnancy and
Mhm.
postpartum.
And I think too, for me, the future of the Black Doula Project, and I've told Stephanie this, but honestly, that eventually we will no longer need to be like legislation will be in place to where the reason for the Black Doula Project, the stories behind the Black Doula Project of not feeling protected, not feeling supported, not feeling like as a birthing person that I'm being heard goes by the wayside because legislation will pick up to the point where it's covered, right? All of these services that you need are covered. And while it's, of course, we never want to see our nonprofit go away. At the same time, if we ever get to a place where that piece of the Black Doula Project is no longer needed, I feel like, after that, I feel like I need a cocktail. Like it's just, I feel like we'll be at a place where we would have left our mark on the world. And I think that that's important. Like being able to close this chapter because the story has been told is where I feel like from a Black Doula Project perspective where we want to be.